Hey everyone, James Niggemeyer here. Thank you for tuning back into my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do another install or episode of my setup. And this one's going to focus around worm fishing, in particular Texas rig worm fishing. What I mean by that is rigging a worm weedless with some sort of weight in front of it to take it down to the bottom to fish the structure and or cover situated on or near the bottom of the lake. So that might mean in 2 foot of water, it might be 22 foot of water, or even 32 foot of water. So it can just vary based on where the fish are located that given time of year. I want to go into the rod, reel, line, and hook, even the weight, and some of the baits that I'll use for that. But it's going to focus on the setup that I use for Texas rig worm fishing. Before we get into it, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Feel free to share it on your social media sites and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about it. When it comes to Texas rig worm fishing, this is something that actually was one of the things that I really kind of cut my teeth on and learned to bass fish with back in the day. Just a standard Texas rig worm. Bullet weight, offset worm hook, or straight shank worm hook, and some sort of plastic. I grew up fishing hand-poured soft plastic worms out in Southern California, and this is probably one of the more underrated techniques or ways to catch fish on any body of water across the country, 365 days out of the year, any season, any water temperature, almost any condition. The Texas rig worm is completely versatile and catches good quality fish. For me, I like either a 7'2" to 7'4", depending upon the water clarity, the size of the fish in a given lake. Some lakes, a 3-pounder is a big one. Some lakes, a 5-pounder is a big one. So with that in mind, I'm going to go into one that I would probably use the most, and that's a 7'2", medium heavy, and a fast action. A rod like this can be used for a lot of different things, but I really like it for Texas rig worm fishing. I like a little bit extra length because a lot of times I'm going to throw that worm way out there and I'm going to work it back across the structure and through any cover like stumps, brush, weeds that might be in and around the bottom. I like the extra length on a 7'2" or a 7'4" so that I can cover a lot of water, but also if I get a bite way out there, I can set the hook and have the leverage to keep that fish pinned all the way to the boat. When it comes to line for worm fishing, I am partial to fluorocarbon. I like fluorocarbon because of its invisibility, its sensitivity, its abrasion resistance, and the lack of stretch is also great at setting the hook from long distances or in and through cover or different things that could potentially stifle your hook set. So fluorocarbon gets the nod most of the time. Unless I'm flipping and pitching, in that instance, I may use braid or braid to a fluorocarbon leader. But fluorocarbon sizes, I'm fishing a finesse worm, maybe 10 or 12 pound test. But for the majority of my Texas rig worm fishing, I'm going to go with 14 to 16 pound test and even heavier up to 20 in some instances. But 14 to 16 pound test gamma fluorocarbon, their gamma edge is what I like. Reels, I like to keep my whole worm outfit pretty light, and for me that's the Hyper Mag made by Lew's. That reel is very light, and the reason I like a lightweight rod and reel is so that I can really feel the cover and potentially the bites down there at the bottom of the lake. So a nice lightweight rod. This is a Lew's custom speed stick. This is actually called their Magnum Bass Rod 2. And I like this rod for a lot of different things. I even use it for bladed jigs like a Striking Thunder Cricket. But that's kind of the setup. The hook that I use is an owner cutting point. I like that cutting point as opposed to a needle point. Needle points work awesome, but I like the cutting point in the offset worm wide gap. Some of my worms don't have a very thick center, and a 4/0 will work. And then some of my worms will need a bigger hook, and then I'll up it to the 5/0. Again, that's the offset wide gap worm hook by owner. And what I mean by bigger worms, bigger bodies, I'm talking about something like this striking thumper worm. That's a pretty thick body. This thumper worm is great. Offshore fishing locations and different structures deep. And then the bullworm. That bullworm's a pretty thick one. It's like the thickness of like a Senko type bait. And so I might go with the 5/0 on that as well. So just keep that in mind. Match the size of the hook to the thickness of the plastic bait. When it comes to weights, I might start with a 5/16 if I've got a lighter, thicker bodied worm or thinner bodied worm, and then bump it up to a 3/8, ½ ounce. And I've even used a 3/4 ounce with more of your ribbon style baits. And the reason I like a little bit heavier weight on your ribbon style baits is because when you have a ribbon style worm like this, the water is pulling across it. And so it takes a little bit more weight to get it to fall. As opposed to a straight tail, it just falls to the bottom. But you want that worm just rippling and doing its thing as it comes to the bottom. So a little bit more weight. And sometimes with worm fishing, a heavier weight will actually get you a reaction strike. So those are some of the things to take into consideration when worm fishing. Again, it's a 7'2" medium heavy, and sometimes I'll bump it up to a 7'4" heavy action. But for most applications, a 7'2" medium heavy, like this Magnum Bass Rod 2 made by Loose, is going to get it done for you. One of the critical things about Texas rig worm fishing is when you get a bite, set the hook and set the hook hard. And that's one of the things I like about that gamma fluorocarbon as far as abrasion resistance and shock resistance. When you set the hook hard with gamma fluorocarbon, the thought of breaking my line on the hook set doesn't even cross my mind. So that's my setup for worm fishing, Texas rig worm fishing. If you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, good fishing.